rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Why? It's because the rich think about wealth and affluence all the time. And what do the poor think about? The poor think about lack, loss, and limitation, risk, danger, fear, failure.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Fortitude Investing channel. Thank you for stopping by and just giving me some of your time this morning. CPI is coming out this morning, so we'll just kind of expect a little bit of volatility this morning up until that release. I'm sure that this data will give us, just enough information for what's to come with rate cuts, so on and so forth. So just watch the news, pay attention, and expect volatility. So in the news these past, probably few weeks, just consistent buying pressure, especially from you public companies that have consistently been buying Bitcoin. And there are other altcoins, of course, there always will be. But the main focus is on Bitcoin, which I think it should be, in my opinion. Not that there's anything wrong with altcoins. I'm an altcoin investor. But these companies are trying to find ways for them to be able to leverage, to be able to borrow against. And this is a risk asset. And for these companies to come out and allocate more than a couple percent of their company, it's not just a few $1 million here, guys. We're talking about companies trying to raise 400, 500 million, billions even, right? Like a hotel chain, right? Of $2 billion worth of Bitcoin. That's a little bit weird, right? Also a little bit weird that now BlackRock files for their ETF just back in January of 2024, and now they're the biggest holder in Bitcoin. Kind of interesting, just the sheer dominance of this company, BlackRock. I mean, obviously, they're buying for their customers, but they still have their own as well. I think it's kind of crazy how we've consistently seen so much buying pressure, but the price hasn't significantly gone up like what we had all expected. So I guess that raises the question, is it either being suppressed or is it over the counter? I think it's a little bit of both. You do your own judgment. But for me, if I was to run a company, investing that much money into a risk asset, you got to have some sort of conviction, right? You don't bet the house on a low odds unless you have either insider information or really have some really good conviction. But I think that there's probably, some insider information, hint, Michael Saylor, or even the president, Donald Trump, for that matter as well. You don't just allocate that much money into a risk asset without, having some really good certainty of hey, you invest $500 million, in 5 years, you're going to see that 500 million turn into 5 billion, right? This is the kind of stuff that I'm saying is we as normal class American citizens, we look at Bitcoin and we see these high prices. It costs a lot of money to get a coin, whatever, yada, yada, yada. I don't think that's necessarily the point. And this kind of comes back to, the recent video I just posted of Bitcoin isn't necessarily something that is going to skyrocket in a week or a day or an hour. Bitcoin is going to be it's strategical. Bitcoin is strategical. Yes, it is always going to increase in value. But being able to borrow from it, being able to use it as a leveraging tool, that's the most important thing. BlackRock is a private equity company, right? What do they buy? They buy companies that are going, or who are going bankrupt, right? They are one of the biggest owners, and they own a ton of the freaking homes, dude. Like real estate, all these different things. Well, if you have Bitcoin, how can you leverage to be able to buy big amounts of real estate? You use Bitcoin to be able to leverage, right? And so do their customers. This is the greatest wealth building tool for anybody, honestly, who has a decent amount of money they can put into this. That's what I'm getting at here, is you're seeing a lot of money and a lot of high dollar individuals investing into this, not because they expect a 50% year after year gain. They expect that they can use Bitcoin to beat the hurdle rate to be able to continue to keep buying real estate, to keep buying businesses, right? This is the greatest wealth building tool we have ever seen. And what the crazy thing is, they are using a deflationary asset to be able to borrow against it tax-free and beat the hurdle rate and continue to avoid taxes, to buy more property, to buy more businesses. And in return, they're like, this is the greatest thing we've ever seen, simply for the fact of it beats out the majority of anything else that you could ever use. It beats out gold, it beats out silver, it beats out property, right? Like this is one of the best tools that anybody who understands this could ever use, right? So I feel like as a community, as a working class American, I feel like we all typically lean more toward altcoins in the expectation that they may have higher returns, which to a certain extent I 100% get. Like, of course, we want to be able to start that growth and, use that money to be able to kind of just start off, right? Because you got to start somewhere. So I agree. I think that it should be, a portfolio of crypto. It's a 50% Bitcoin and the rest is altcoin. And the reason why I say this is when you sell your altcoins, right, you're transferring a deflationary asset into an inflationary US dollar. So if I would have traded my Bitcoin or whatever in 2020, right, if I would have sold it, say, for $20,000, and I would have just held that $20,000, right, of profit in my bank account, and I never touched it. And then today I'm like, hey, I'm ready to reinvest this money. I would have lost $5,000 due to inflation of 20% over the last 5 years. That's what I'm getting at here is you put that on a big scale, right? 20 million, that's $5 million, guys. 200 million, that's $50 million lost due to inflation. That's why this stuff is so incredibly important. When most asset managers years ago, if they got 7 to 10%, man, everybody was excited, happy, like this is great, right? And then along comes Bitcoin, they're like 50%. Wait, what? Like this is everybody's dream. Of course, it would never happen, and then it did come true. And anybody who understands it was like, we want all of our money in that. So you're going to start to see over the next 5 years, Bitcoin's supply will continue to dry up. Who's buying this stuff, right? Well, it's not your everyday investor. And if it is, right, it's not like hundreds of millions of dollars that these companies are, trying to buy, like, the average income is not even, $50,000 in America, right? 75% of all Americans have less than $500 in buying power. So you can already knock out the majority, 3/4 of the population in America, right? I know there's still everybody in the world's buying this stuff, but what I'm getting at here is that at least in America, 3 out of the 4 people can't even invest into really anything. So why would they invest into Bitcoin if they barely have enough money to really even survive? So what I'm saying here is there's not a lot of retail investors who are buying Bitcoin. This is big corporations, big money who is coming in here and they're playing ball. Honestly, I think in the next 5 years, there's going to be a supply shortage and it's going to be ugly. And there's going to be a lot of people who missed out. The same people who missed out at $10,000, $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 are going to be the same ones that, again, missed out at $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, whatever it is, right? That's not my predictions, but that's going to happen eventually. It's going to happen. It's bound to happen, right? When are you going to realize that it's never going to get any better unless you start taking action, right? The best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, right? The next best time is today. Today, start today. Find a way to allocate some money, right? Because even a $5,000 to $10,000 in Bitcoin, right? If you were to have a 5% to 10%, right? A tenth of a Bitcoin, right? And it continues to appreciate to that 5 million mark, that's $500,000, guys. It's $10,000 in 5 years to turn into $500,000. That buys a house. That more than likely buys a house, right? These are the things that I'm trying to tell you to say, hey, let's not look at this in a way of how much money we can make. What is the long term and how can we use it to leverage? I want to drill that into your head. Bitcoin is a leverage and wealth building tool, right? Altcoins make you money. Bitcoin leverages, okay? Especially the more scarce it becomes and the more adoption that there is. Oh my gosh, guys, we're just getting started. Like, we just got out of the Wild West. We are just entering the beginning stages of what Bitcoin can really do. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the comment section. Thank you guys so much. I will talk to you all soon. See ya.